So say that you're a guy who has a few girls on his roster. A couple of those girls are just something to do when there's nothing to do. Like you ain't trying to wipe them or anything, y'all just kick it and that's it. But then there's two girls out of all the girls that you actually got feelings for, but you just can't decide which one to commit to. One of the girls you got feelings for is constantly reciprocating that they have feelings for you as well. And all your homeboys are saying that, man, that's the one. She treats you well, she acknowledges you, she's perfect, and you should tie the knot. Then there's the other girl who you have feelings for, but she kind of got you at an arm's length because to her, you're just another boy on her roster. And while she's feeling you, she is still waiting to see what you're going to be before she lets you in. In this scenario, it's more logical to go with the one who's already reciprocating the feelings you have, especially since everyone loves her for you already. But as the saying goes, the heart wants what the heart wants. And there's just something about the girl that's a little wishy-washy that has you sprung. So in the end, while things are a little less certain, you gotta pursue her because that's where your heart is. Now you're probably wondering what any of this has to do with Anthony Black. Well, in a way, that was Anthony's situation when trying to make a decision on where his sports journey was going to take him next. Anthony was already a 4-star football recruit before he even got 1 star in basketball. Most people thought he was a better football player than basketball player, yet he couldn't shake his love for the game. And when it came down to making a decision, he chose basketball because that's where his heart was. And in today's video, I'm going to tell y'all all about Anthony Black's winning journey from a bright football future to top 10 pick in the 2023 NBA draft. But before I do that, y'all do me a solid and hit that like button and subscribe. And with that out of the way, this is the story of Anthony Black. Anthony Black was born January 20, 2004 in Las Colinas, Texas to parents Terry and Jennifer Black. Both of Anthony's parents were Division I athletes. His mom Jen played soccer at Texas before transferring to Baylor, where she would meet his father Terry, who played on the basketball team and was a pretty decent player himself. His pops Terry was no slouch as a basketball player, as he won a pair of state championships in high school and led Indian Hills to back-to-back NJCAA national championships, while averaging 13 points and 8 rebounds per game. He was a 2-time JC All-American and was named the nation's best defender in junior college before transferring to Baylor, where he had 2 more great seasons, averaging 13 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists for his career, as well as being named to the 2001 All-Big 12 first team, and then being inducted into the Baylor Hall of Fame in 2015. So with such an athletic family background, it should be no surprise that Anthony would turn out to be quite the athlete himself. Now, while Anthony was still an infant, his family moved to Germany so his father could continue his basketball career. This helped Anthony diversify a little, as he was able to speak German fluently by the time he was 3. But before he started kindergarten, his mom decided to move back to the States as she felt that it was best for the family. Now, obviously, sports were a big thing in his family, and most kids who get into sports only do one sport nowadays because every youth sport is pretty much year-round. Even if the actual games are only for one season, there's still off-season practices and workouts and different rec and AAU leagues to participate in. So if you're trying to play a sport for a living, most suggest that you specialize in that sport and put all your time and energy into honing your craft. Well, that's not how Anthony's mom saw it, as she actually encouraged her kids to play multiple sports, as she felt there was a lot to learn from everything you do. As well, if you're only doing one thing, it feels like you never have a break and it's easy to get burnt out on. So she allowed her kids to broaden their horizons, and that's exactly what young Anthony did. Now, Anthony's first sport was actually baseball, then it was soccer, and after soccer it was football. And as a naturally gifted athlete, he excelled at all 3 of them. As growing up, he played on some of the best youth teams that were ranked near the top of the nation year in and year out, with many of these programs producing high-level D1 athletes in all 3 sports that Anthony was elite in. But as for basketball, which was Anthony's 4th sport, he was just good, not elite. And as for most of his youth, he only really played in smaller leagues. Now, while basketball was the sport he was arguably the worst at, for some reason he really loved playing basketball, which is wild but makes sense when you hear about Anthony's personality, as he hates losing. Like growing up, his family was ultra competitive and he was one of the younger ones, so his older sister and cousins used to beat him in many games and embarrass him after losses, which only made him go harder because he didn't like losing. Anthony has also confirmed this, saying that he hates losing more than he loves winning. So dude is a dog and he wants to be a winner in everything he does. And there's something that you're doing but others seem to be better than you, people who hate losing going to develop an obsession with winning and being great at everything they do. And that's the type of person Anthony is. So it makes sense why he started to love basketball, because it was more challenging than some of the other things he was doing that he was already great in. Now, moving on from that, things started to change as time went on. He eventually left baseball alone, as well as gave up soccer in middle school after he was asked to sign a contract that prohibited him from playing other organized team sports, which left the two girls that he had to decide between who to commit to. Early decisions seemed to be making itself for him, as he was a standout in football early on. He started off at Copper High's freshman team, which played in Texas' hardest division, which was Division 6A. He was a two-way cornerback that also played wideout, and by the end of his freshman season, he was a full-time wideout on varsity, and colleges started to show interest and even make some offers while he was just a freshman. Now, playing on varsity as a freshman in football in Texas 6A division is no easy feat, as Texas is really the football state of America, and they take football very serious in the Lone Star State. So Anthony was the truth in the sport. Now, switching over to basketball, things were a little different. Anthony actually made varsity as a freshman to start the season, but the difference is that basketball just isn't as big as football in Texas, so it wasn't as difficult to make varsity, and even though he made the varsity team, he wasn't a star or anything like that, as most people still consider him a better football player than basketball player, and when some of his teammates started getting offers, he wasn't a part of that group, as most scouts kind of overlooked him. This made Anthony feel like he had to go football, even though he loved basketball a little bit more. And those feelings would seemingly be confirmed after a breakout sophomore season where he caught 47 passes for 859 yards and 9 touchdowns, with his biggest game coming against Flower Mound, where he went off with a 228 two-touchdown performance. Dude was an absolute beast on the gridiron, and schools were taking notice as the offers started to really come in. He was getting offers from Kansas, Arkansas, Houston, Baylor, Cincinnati, and more. He also was ranked as a 4-star recruit by many recruiting services. Now, while getting all this love in football, he still wanted to play basketball because that's where his heart was. But it's not easy to do, as playing varsity for 2 different sports in one of, if not the toughest division in the entire nation when it comes to high school sports, is just tough to do. Mostly due to scheduling conflicts. But the only reason Anthony was allowed some leeway is because he was so great at both. Even though he was only really locally known as a basketball prospect, he was unranked and only had one offer from North Texas by the end of his sophomore year. At this point, football was looking like the clear choice, as that's where all the hype for Anthony was. But he would catch a break in his basketball journey, as towards the end of his sophomore year, the pandemic would begin. The pandemic caused a lot of issues for most localities, but the Dallas area was one of the few localities that still allowed for sports to continue. So when Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour all canceled their circuits that year, it left many of the 4- and 5-star basketball prospects no other option but to get together with other top-level prospects and head to Dallas to continue to play basketball. And that's exactly what Anthony needed to get his name buzzing, because Anthony's biggest issue was a lack of exposure. He played for 3D Empire, which was a smaller AAU team that played locally and had no team van, no shoe company funding, just a normal AAU team that nobody really knew about until those tournaments were set up in Dallas. And all the high-end prospects had to go at each other, giving Anthony an opportunity to show what he was capable of, and he did just that. And by the end of the summer, he was a legit basketball prospect with multiple offers heading into his junior year. Now, even though Anthony had finally established himself as a basketball prospect, and most scouts figured that since he would have a choice to play either basketball or football at the next level, he more than likely would go with basketball, because that's where most of the kids go when they're such a high-level prospect. Anthony still decided to play football in his junior season for his last football season, and had an okay season, though not as good from a pure number standpoint as his sophomore campaign. Now, basketball was a completely different story, as he had his best season yet, averaging 16 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals per game as a junior, and was named second team All-Area. Now, the counting stats might not look that impressive for a supposed star high school player, the numbers still don't tell the whole story. Anthony was a ferocious defender. He had a gift at reading the offense and just being in the right spot at the right time. His ability to defend is reminiscent of Lonzo Ball and Andre Iguodala, guys who can guard 1 through 4 if need be, and does so without fouling, which is a rare thing even for great defenders. Another thing about Anthony's game is that his playmaking touch doesn't always show up in the assist column. Anthony will make a pass that immediately opens the floor for his teammate that will make an additional pass for an easy bucket, also very similar to Lonzo and Josh Giddey. These intangibles add to the impact that Anthony Black has on the court and are a big reason he is seen as such a great prospect. Now, moving to the summer of 2021, things only continued to get better for Anthony as he continued to get more exposure as more states started to allow basketball tournaments, and Anthony got the chance to travel and play more high-level competition in different regions, which led to more exposure, and the icing on the cake was that Anthony was able to help 3D Empire win the biggest basketball tournament in Las Vegas that summer. By this point, Anthony is a 5-star prospect and ranked as a consistent top 20 prospect in the nation, with offers from all the top schools across the nation. At this point, his mom thought it was time to move him to a school with more competition, as she felt that was best for her son's development. So she enrolled him at Duncanville High in Duncanville, Texas, which is a team that had won the 6A state title, and is also where head coach David Peavy was coaching, who has also had a romantic relationship with Anthony's mom, Jen. This transfer actually ended up causing Anthony some trouble, as he was initially ruled ineligible to play at Duncanville because the UIL executive committee ruled the move was due to athletic purposes and was being influenced by Duncanville High School basketball coach David Peavy. Anthony's mom will go on to appeal the decision, stating that the move was for family purposes, as she was in a relationship with David Peavy and the couple had been living together for 2 years. The appeal granted Anthony an injunction and he was able to play for a few games while the appellate courts decided, but the decision was between 2 appellate courts, and ultimately he was ruled ineligible again, causing another appeal, this time to the Supreme Court. Anthony was granted another injunction to play while awaiting a decision. Anthony ended up appearing in 19 games for Duncanville, averaging 14 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals, on the way to helping the team win their 3rd straight state title. Unfortunately though, the Supreme Court will rule that Anthony was in fact ineligible and that Duncanville will be stripped of their state title for playing an eligible player. Anthony will commit to Arkansas with fellow 5-star players Nick Smith and Jordan Walsh, giving the Razorbacks one of the top recruiting classes in the nation, as well as make them one of the most promising teams heading into the collegiate season. Anthony was also just barely able to sneak onto the McDonald's All-American team, as he barely met the requirements to be eligible for the game. He also ended up getting an invite to the Nike Hoop Summit after an injury to another player. Lastly, he was able to make the USA Under-18 national team, in which he helped lead the team to a gold medal, averaging about 5 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists per game, ending off one hell of a high school career. Now, starting off his college career, Anthony was going to have to compete for a starting position, as one wasn't just immediately available. Arkansas had arguably one of the best recruiting classes heading into the year, and was able to get arguably the #1 rated recruit in Nick Smith Jr. You also have to account for returning guard Devontae Davis and Ricky Council, who they got in the transfer portal and was really good at Wichita State a year earlier. With that said, Anthony loves competition, and pretty early on, head coach Eric Musselman was able to see something special in Anthony and knew that Anthony would be the most important player when it comes to winning. He loved how unselfish Anthony played, as well as the high-level defense and playmaking ability that he showed. Anthony would be the only player to start every game for Arkansas that season. He averaged about 13 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists a game. He had his best moment during the Maui Invitational, where he dropped back-to-back 26-point games against Louisville and Creighton, which was his season high. He led Arkansas all the way to the Sweet 16, where they would lose to the eventual national champs UConn, in the game that he dropped 20 points to go along with 5 steals to end his freshman season. He led the team in assists and was second in points and rebounds. He was also the only player in the SEC to rank among the league's top 25 in the 5 major categories. He led the SEC in minutes played, as well as becoming the first player in Razorbacks history to reach 450 points, 180 rebounds, 140 assists in a single season. After the season, Anthony declared for the NBA draft, where he was allowed to go in the top 10 and will eventually be selected with the 6th pick in the NBA draft to the Orlando Magic. So that's how Anthony Black went from being a football star and an unranked basketball prospect to the 6th pick in the NBA draft. Obviously, this is only the beginning of Anthony's story, and there's going to be a lot more to come as his basketball career advances. I really believe that the Magic got a solid one, and that's why I'm making this video. While researching his story, I watched his own doc series on his YouTube channel, which I would recommend y'all check out if y'all want to see him in his everyday life. As a young man, he comes off extremely humble and seems like a cool dude to be around, but in reality, he's a wolf in sheep's clothing, because he's going to come at you and he's going to give you everything he has on the basketball court, and I absolutely love it. Honestly, I expect a lot out of this guy. I think he's one of the safest picks in this draft, because at worst, he's Marcus Smart with better shooting tendencies. At his best, he's the best of a combination of Lonzo when Lonzo is at the top of his game, and Josh Giddey when Giddey's having the best game, and that kind of player to me is a star. Well, that's all I got for the Anthony Black story, as it's still being written. If you made it this far, then you must have enjoyed the video, so go ahead and leave me a like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.